Property renovation. So I started here, even in New Zealand when I first came over, and it's just a passion that has stayed with me. I can never get enough of it. Taking an asset that's a little bit sad and tired, renovating it into something that looks amazing, and then watching a family or an investor take it over and just go forward with it. It's quite satisfying to me, and the UK has such a unique sort of ecosystem where this is possible. I've got a lot of friends from around the world, and this ability to add this much capital growth to a property and sell it on for a profit doesn't really exist in many places around the world. I'm blessed to be here and been a part of it. So to start off, like I said, this is regardless whether you're doing it yourself or a sourcing agent is doing it on your behalf, packaging it together and delivering it to you. So most of the work should be done in your office space, wherever that may be, the couch or kitchen table while you're eating cornflakes, it doesn't matter. You triage the information that's coming through to you to try and identify something that's going to match your strategy. Whether that's cash flow or capital, it doesn't matter. You should be using a spreadsheet to identify very quickly if it's in your wheelhouse, something that you're interested in. Analyzing a deal should take no more than 5 minutes. This is quick fire numbers. This can be done on a piece of paper while you're standing in the property. Spreadsheet, like I said, should take you no more than 5 minutes. Now, the return that you're looking for is relative to you. I get a lot of questions from people I work with or students saying, what should I accept? What's the best? What's the lowest? That is completely relative to you. If you're looking at no less than 8% or no less than 20%. There is no right or wrong to that. It's whatever you're happy to do, to have working forward, and obviously it's going to be relative to the strategy you're putting forward. With the cash flow, you're going to get a bigger return from HMOs and serviced accommodation, etc. But you're going to get a smaller return from buy-to-lets, which you're going to hold in your portfolio for a certain period of time, and then possibly exiting it down 2 years down the line when a train line has been finished that's caused capital growth in it. And what I like to do is every Christmas sit down, take a look at my portfolio, identify something that has come to the end of its life or something has happened in the environment that has created capital growth, and I'll quite happily liquidate that. So it's all about, constantly checking what you've got, what could be classed as dead wood, and how can you make that money work harder for you somewhere else. Check your deal exits. Now this is a big one. This is an amateur mistake where they zero in on something that's going to work in that area. Now we always say minimum 2 exits. What we mean by that is if you've got a flip, double check that if there's a market correction of some sort or a stabilization where it's not moving or you're not getting the offers coming through that you want, that you're going to be able to rent it locally, usually as a buy-to-let, to cover its costs until the market recovers or starts going in the direction you want to. It's better to have 3. That could be a case of instead of flipping it, buy-to-let, you could turn it into a holiday let, Airbnb, or serviced accommodation. So once again, you have these in your spreadsheets. Just to double check, yes, tick for my original return that I want, and tick for my at least second exit. This is very important. If you are at the percentage return that you're happy with, you can now move on to the due diligence and information gathering stage. Now, this is, once again, a very important stage, and you can take as long or as short as you want. Sorry, I'm just going to hang up on my phone. Sorry about that. You can take as long or as short a period of time to do this as you want. There are so many deals out there now that so many sites out there now where you can do all your research. There really is no excuse for not coming up with the information you need. The deal itself is broken down into two categories. The property with numbers, area, markets, what's happening in the area, is something getting extended, what's going to affect the capital value of this property. And it could be something external like an airport or a shopping center opening up or something like that. It could have a negative effect on the property, but none of this is hidden. So for instance, if there's a pig farm that's been given the go-ahead to extend to get more little piggies in there, but that is not ideal on the outskirts of a village where you've got a large amount of buy-to-lets or family people living, that could have a negative effect. Now, all of this can be researched using the local council's website. So there's no excuse for something further down the line that you weren't aware of popping up. The second part of it is obviously the people. Who are you selling it to? Who are you going to rent it to? Is it close to a hospital? Are you going to zero in on new doctors or nurses? Or is it in a student area where you're not going to want a family living, or they're more so they're not going to want to live? And once again, buyers, very simple demographic of, are they a family? Are they newly married? Professionals. They don't want a huge backyard where they've got to mow the lawns, etc., etc. So you're doing research on those two separate subjects, as well as the finance and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. But this is the core of the property. Why are we buying this, and who are we exiting it to? Now, I get this a lot from people. You can talk yourself out of any deal. You really can. And this is where it's important to see who you've got in your business. It's great to have a driver who's pushing forward. Yeah, let's do it. I love this. And you've got to have the analyst who is drilling into the details and going, hold your horses here. Did you know this is happening or that's happening in the environment? Those two are the perfect environment to watch a company grow and flourish. You don't want a company full of drivers who just get on with it and don't look at the detail. Now, my biggest thing I like to say is you always need a female in your property business. You do. They're amazing at this. There's not much that they don't know what's going on in their area. It's just something they can do, for want of a soft word. All right. Making an offer. Now, to estate agents or buying agents, we can be their friend and we can be their enemy. It just depends on what day we're talking about here, because we naturally, and this goes for sourcing agents as well, they are not going to offer what that property is on the market for, straight up. Very rarely, I don't think I ever have. So they can get slightly animated with you or your sourcing agent when you produce your offer. But on the flip side, if something is staying on their books and not moving because it has an issue of some sort that your average Joe on the street doesn't want to deal with, we can be the savior and come in and move that off their books. So a lot of them have statistics on Rightmove, so they look at Rightmove like we do, but they have a next version of it where it shows their selling times, how quickly something comes onto the market with them and it's sold, their selling prices relative to what it went on the market for. So they get a lot of stats and readout. Now, they get one distressed property or something in not great condition come onto their books and sit there. That can have quite a damaging effect on their market markers. So they can no longer say that we'd liquidate every property on our books within 6 weeks. So that's where we can swoop in, and they tend to like us. On the other side with our offers, they don't tend to like us that much, but that's the point. We're following a spreadsheet. No emotion involved in here. It's all about numbers. Now, when you do put forward your offer, whatever it may be. Try and make yourself as attractive as possible. So here's my solicitor's details. This is the possible survey date that I can go with, and explain your offer. Don't just lowball them and say that's what you're getting. Explain the cost of this or the cost of that. Give them something to feed forward to the seller, because this helps them justify why your offer is coming in at the value it has. Next slide here, spreadsheet, right? I know I've been talking about this, but these are very, very important, and a big no-no for me is changing the numbers on your spreadsheet to fit the deal. That's false economy. The numbers are relatively easy to drill into and to download from the internet. You fit them into the spreadsheet. The return on investment will be calculated. Now, the only way to alter that return on investment is either by upping the rent, which could be adding more rooms or maybe an ensuite to an HMO or something like that, or dropping the sale price. We can't alter stamp duty, we can't alter the legal costs or the sourcing fees or renovation costs. We can't alter any of that. They are what they are. And this is a common mistake I see of people, maybe shaving a little bit off of this and this that will give us that 16%. I would rather see you hold out from a deal for another month and get it at the value that you want it at, then launch in and try and absorb £2,000 into the ether. It doesn't work, and that's amateur investing. Strategies for the distressed or property renovation, there's quite a remit of these. They're not just buying a distressed, a broken down building, renovating and selling it. It could be you're doing it to a buy-to-let, so you're renovating it. You could sell it, or you refinance and pull that property back, the money back out of that property, and then go forward and do another one. It could be HMO. You could be buying HMOs, adding rooms, improving the layout, installing en-suites, anything like this to add capital. All comes under the remit of distressed or improving an asset somehow, so you can either sell it and make more capital or refinance and try and get as much of your capital back out again. Serviced accommodation, changing a nice family let in the center of York, if it is permitted, into Airbnb. I mean, there's a strong tourist trade here, and this is a way to get a simple standard 2-bedroom flat or 3-bedroom asset in the middle of the town to start really cash flowing. And all of this is under the distressed issue. Basic flip. A basic flip is buying a property, renovating it, not needing any PDR, so that's permitted development right. Okay, so this is quite important. This is buying a property, extending it to a certain amount. For example, different councils have different rules, but here we're allowed to extend a property 3 meters out the back, single story, with a 1 meter wraparound to the side, and we don't need planning to do it. We need to tell them that we are doing it, but we actually don't have to go through the planning department. We have to just notify them of it. You will still need building control, and building control is separate. They come and check that you're using the right materials to do it, but you can just do it. Now, if you're detached, if your property is detached, you can go 4 meters out, single story. And once again, without the need for going through planning. So these little things are important, and your sourcing agent will know what's the go in the area, because you're basically extending the asset. Anywhere where you're increasing the footprint of a building, you're increasing its capital value, and this is where this could be done for HMO, which we've done many a times, or for a basic family house with a flip. Now, anywhere where you're stepping into the reams of planning, this is more development. Okay, so you're going to go through the planning process first, and there are a number of ways this can be done. You can buy it with existing planning in place, but generally a lot of the profit is already taken up in the sale price of the land or the building. Or you can get an option to purchase the property subject to the planning being permitted for whatever you're wanting to do with this. But this does mean you're going to have to get architect's drawings, you're going to have to get all sorts of planning applications put into to the local council. They have a 6-week time period, especially in York here, where they have to give you an answer. Whether it's yes or no, it doesn't matter. If they go over that time, you're actually allowed to start the building project. So as you would imagine, councils are pretty sharp at getting a reply to you. But that's bigger stuff. That's maybe a little bit further down the line. The last one there is gaining planning, an option to sell. So it could be a case of you find a building, you get planning on it, you don't do any work to it whatsoever, and you sell it on to a smaller other investor who wants to do the work himself. This is a great strategy. Arguably, it's the first bite of the cherry is the sweetest, where you're making capital with very little physical work involved. It's just a paperwork exercise. All of these, to me, fall under the remit of distress strategies where you're adding value somehow. Reasons. I used to get this question quite a lot. Yeah, but why are they selling it? Why aren't they doing the work? Why is the property at that price? Why haven't they got money together themselves? And there could be a wide range of reasons. But there's a lot of strategies that people will not get themselves involved in. Average, office workers or your average person on the street, they don't want to refurb properties. The thought of working and trying to communicate with a builder is their worst nightmare. Yeah, so the basic one is a derelict property. Okay, so that's quite simple. It looks horrendous. The Addams family house maybe comes to mind. This is probably a pretty extreme one to step into, but it all goes on the spreadsheet in numbers. Yeah. Dated or bad layout. The bad layout could be an HMO. It could be a house or a property for a family where they've done improvements themselves, which couldn't really be classed as improvements. The house doesn't flow. And I like to talk about this a lot when I'm doing viewings. We've all got the ability. Does the house feel right? Do you walk in and then take 3 lefts and a right before you walk through a bedroom and into a lounge? I've seen some strange stuff in my time. So you can simply add value by changing the layout or taking the advice of the sourcing agent on opening a door here, maybe moving something here. And another very simplistic one is having the wrong agent. I had a scenario where I brought an HMO, and it's quite simply the guy had the property for sale in a more upmarket town that was about 15 miles away, because he thought someone in that environment has got more money and will be interested in this property. He couldn't be more wrong. That property had been on the market for 14 months. We saw it just by chance, went and viewed it, and ended up getting an option and buying that, and it was one of our best cash flowing HMOs. Structural movement, next down the list here. I don't have much fear of structural movement, if I'm honest. Everything is repairable at a cost. There's all sorts of new building techniques where they can pump and underpin, etc. And there's just a cost attached to that, and that cost gets put into your spreadsheet, which reduces your offer price, which means it now becomes in your percentage where you're happy to move on it. It could be investor overspend or over leveraged. They have another project coming up. This is the last of 3 houses for sale. they might be happy to sell it for cost so they can release their capital and move on with this next project they're doing. It could be over leveraged, as in the bank has got hold of them and said, you need to start selling off some of your assets because you're starting to make us a bit nervous. I see this quite a lot, and this is where sometimes you'll see portfolios going up into auctions, etc., like Haley mentioned. Repossessions, unfortunately, someone is unable to service their mortgage. Now, these don't happen lightly. Most mortgage companies will work with people as much as possible to try and keep them in their property, because basically once they get a repossession on their books, this is a toxic mortgage. So they need to get that capital back out of that property as quick as possible. Now, this is a whole strategy in itself, because banks can easily advertise what your offer was on a repossessioned property. So for example, if the property is for sale for 100 grand, they are duty bound, and the mortgage is maybe 50 grand that they're trying to retrieve, they're duty bound to try and get as much over that 50 grand as possible. And one of the ways they do this is if you offer £60,000, they might put a full page ad in the local newspaper saying, guess what, this house is worth 100,000 and we have an offer of £60,000 on it. Anyone want to offer 61? Now, as an investor, you scream your head off when you read that, because that was your offer. But they're doing it because they are duty bound to get as much of that capital back to the original inhabitant as it is. And it's just a game we have to play with them. It could be someone moving jobs, as simply as that. Living in the UK, all of a sudden they get a massive opportunity in Dubai or Hong Kong, something or rather, and they want to liquidate quick and get moving because this is going to be their new life. A really great opportunity. I've had one of these where the guy's pretty much put all his cards on the table and said, you just make me an offer and I'll take it. That was an amazing conversation. That's probably the quickest negotiation I've ever done. Relationship breakups. Yeah, pretty hard times. Who knows how many of these are going to come out of lockdown? Interesting, locked up with your other half. Family upsizing. All of a sudden, it's not just a baby, it's twins. So you'll find a family wanting to move before that 9-month mark is up, and they've got 2 of them on their hands. Probate is a death in the family. The family may not want to deal with, mum or dad's house. There's too much emotion there. Maybe they don't want to refurb. They're really not interested. They just want to liquidate the cat and get on with it. Now, importantly with probate, you'll see that sourcing agents will do that. They will look into how many people are the recipients of the capital that's going to come out of the probate. If you've got 4 brothers and none of them get on, it can be a big problem, and probate can drag if the other side are not in agreement to an offer that has been made. Probate also can take a while, where the government organisation will evaluate all the assets the person had. That comes right down to jewelry, property, cars, everything gets evaluated. So an inheritance tax is calculated on that, and that's just a time process. You can't speed that up. But generally, the estate agent will keep their finger on the pulse for that. So you can view a property that's in probate. They just can't accept an offer from you until it comes out of probate. Portfolio breakups. That's quite often, you see this very often, where someone is possibly at a different phase of their investment cycle, and they're going to liquidate 25% of their portfolio, maybe pay some of the mortgages down on their existing stock. Once again, I get this question from people, this is a great HMO, why are they selling it? What's wrong with it? What's the problem? There doesn't always have to be a problem. It could be, and this is where we like to talk directly with them and get the answers. Why are you doing this? Because I want to do this and this and this. And then short leases and title issues. Once again, going back to the estate agent, we can be the problem solver here. launch in and help them get this off their books. So that was a bit about reasons. Now, where to find? Obviously, there's a lot of portals out there. Rightmove is the one that jumps to mind, but there are very many others, and they're increasing constantly, actually. But don't forget about letting agents. This is a great area. I've found a lot of property investment deals through these guys. Simply a simple conversation with a letting agent. Have you got any landlords on your books that are looking to sell? Now, as a letting agent, if you're letting an HMO or a buy-to-let or something or other, this is on your books and you're servicing it. Now, best case scenario for them is if they can sell or get the investor to sell to another investor who's going to keep it on the books with them. They don't want it to be sold externally and then someone else comes in and says, removes it from that letting agent and hands it over to their local letting agent. So they can be a really good source, especially with HMOs or serviced accommodation, because they know all the details, they know the numbers on it, which are important, and you'll get a good gauge if they want to keep it on their books or not. Auctions once again are a good one. They bought a law in, it's a good 5 years now, which I'm all for, where they can't do something I called shark baiting. So they would put a property that's worth 100,000 on for 30,000 pounds, just to create the shark frenzy of everyone's like, oh, that's an amazing deal, and everyone launches into that, and it ends up going for 100 grand anyway. So now they must have that price within 10% of what the reserve will be, and this is a good way for us to be able to calculate quickly, and it gets rid of a lot of time wasting. So I'm all for that. If you are a homegrown investor, you can leaflet or newspaper adverts. I've got a phone script that I hand out. Anyone that's coming through the course, I suggest that you get what we call a nutter phone, and from the old days, that's a second phone, a pay-as-you-go phone, because once you're advertising yourself out there with a phone number, you will get contacted by a few odd balls, shall we say, telling you all sorts of interesting things that you don't really want to hear. So it's quite important that you protect your main phone line and have this nutter number where you can filter these interesting people. Another good thing, especially with the leafleting, is put a different name down there. It could be Paul, Sally, Grover. You could use a crazy name like Haley or something like that. Yeah. And the point of that is you can zero in where you're getting the best response. Is it your leaflets that's got Paul on it? Or is it your newspaper ads that has Haley on it? And this can help you just increase the supply in that area to get more feedback. Direct to council was a good one. Empty homes officers, the environmental officer, the HMO officer, all of these guys, remember, this is what they do. They're dealing with property on a day-to-day. So if you can create a decent relationship with them, you could start solving their problems. So I especially remember in the area we were quite dominant in, we found that the local council HMO officer would start coming and ringing us to talk about, number one, certain rules and regulations that were going on. Also, do we know who's got this property, or do we know who's got that property? And we would always finish it in, if you find them and it's not up to standard, ask them if they're looking to sell, instead of having the pain of the council on their back. And they knew that if we took over the property, we would raise it to the current standards, and that's one less problem HMO for the HMO officer to deal with. Builders are a good one. A lot of builders, especially if you work well with a builder, he spots a project while he's out. He says, oh, we could do this, we could do that to that. You're going to add money to that. I've got many a property through builders, basically because they want to keep their guys busy as well. Sourcing agents, we've sort of touched on them quite a bit. They're a fantastic tool to do all of this upfront and then deliver these deals straight to your email box. I mean, it's amazing. We do all our own numbers on it, sure. We do our due diligence on the sourcing agents, and it's getting easier and easier and easier to do that now. There's a number of places we can search, number of questions that you can ask, and I think last week, Haley, you did quite a substantial sort of drilling into a sourcing agent, and this is the information you want to extract from them. So very important to do that, DD, because there are a lot of sourcing agents out there that aren't resonating at the right level, but we can hunt them down pretty quickly. Word of mouth. Mr. Fox, I've got written there. This is a classic example where I renovated a property. Someone was buying it before I'd finished, and the neighbor next door found me my next property. That was amazing. I just moved the guys off one side straight into the next one. More eyes on the ground, and if you're going to offer them a finder's fee, that really encourages them to do this kind of thing. Other investors are a really good way. They're not always our competition. Talking to them, being open about it. Have you seen this? Have you seen that environment? I've bought 3 houses here. This is the reason I've brought them here. You should really think about getting one yourself. I can't buy all the properties that are around me, but I can also give someone else the opportunity to do it, because if they're a decent landlord or investor, they're going to improve the area like I am, which is going to improve the capital value of my asset. So sharing information isn't a no-no, especially with investors. And retiring landlords. You get a lot of these guys who have a large portfolio, and then they're looking to slowly liquidate them one or two a year, taking advantage of their capital gains allowance, which is about £12,800 at the moment per person. So that's tax-free on any capital gains from selling off an asset. And they may be looking to sell 1 or 2 properties a year. Now, you get into an older landlord who has a property portfolio of 20, and you agree with him to buy 1 or 2 a year, you're just walking into deals. This is a great strategy if you can agree on price. They are going to save themselves on selling fees with local agents, and also with liquidating them slowly, they're going to save themselves on tax as well. Viewings. Once again, this is a bit of a snapshot of what sourcing agents do for you if you're not homegrown and doing it yourself. When you're doing a viewing, document them as much as humanly possible. I have a checklist that I hand out to the people on the course, and every little detail, because if you're viewing or your sourcing agent is viewing 8 properties a day, very quickly do you lose track of what was where. Photos as well. Take as many photos as you can, but like I've got down a little bit further down there, ask permission. Don't go in and taking selfies all over the place, all over the house. It can upset some people. Also, you'll find if you go into a repossession, you're not allowed to take photos on the inside of a repossession, or more commonly will be known as a company-owned property. The banks are very risk averse, we know this, right down to the point of taking a photo inside a building. Don't forget to take a photo of your fuse board and your gas meter as well, in case you don't have your electrician or plumber viewing the property with you, because they can identify issues very quickly. To give you an example, maybe the fuse board is underrated or it's not up to current regulations. They can identify that very quickly. And like a gas meter, they can see that the external pipe coming off the gas meter is only 15 mil. That needs to be upgraded to 22 mil to supply to the builder. This is new building regulations, and you might not have priced for that, having the gas boiler at the back of the property. That could be an extra £300 that you missed off your pricing calculator. When we come to viewing, I like to use the clock face method. So that's where you walk to the front door, you start by taking a picture of the front door. And then once you've done all your viewing on the inside, you take another picture of the front door. That's when you get home and you're doing your numbers, you can download that segment of photos. It's something very simple, but it causes a lot less chaos when you're trying to figure out what that picture was of and where it came from. The clock face is more of a case of when you walk in the front door, you start viewing at 12 o'clock and you go to every room around the clock face. So then you go to the room to the right, and then the next room to the right, and then maybe up the stairs and start again. Room in front, room to the left or right, and then the room at the back of you, and then round to the other side. And this gets done in each room as well. So whichever room you are in, you walk into the room and start with the clock face again in a smaller dial in that room, because that way you're looking at the radiator, the window, the socket outlets, the carpet, the wallpaper, and you're keeping it structured. And once you get into that structure, especially when you're pricing up and looking back at your photos, it's very easy to identify something that you need to put in your spreadsheet. It's all about structure, really. Now, don't forget outside as well. Quite important. There are a number of things that can cause costs to rise outside. One is trees, or the lovely plant known as Japanese knotweed. This is a plant that can be very invasive to brick built buildings in the UK. It does get a bad rap, but the biggest issue with knotweed is lenders straight up do not like it. It can be removed if it exists in a property. It costs quite a few £1,000s. I've been in environments where we've done it, where they dig the whole place up down to about 1.2 or something meters, and then they sift the dirt to remove all the plant that's actually under the ground. Knotweed was introduced by the Victorians actually as quite a pretty plant. They didn't realize how much knotweed likes the British environment, and it goes pretty wild. It was also used by the Victorian trains to knit together the embankments on the side of train tracks. It was very good at that, but it didn't respect borders and started jumping fences and spreading into property backyards. So it's a very important one not to miss, should we say. Now, who do you need in your team? And your toolbox is full of who you need, and there's a large amount of members that make up your team or your sourcing agent's team. And so this is a good way for me to justify what a sourcing agent does for you. They bring together these tried and tested people. And we've all had situations where we've come across a builder that probably wasn't that good, or a plumber or something like that. Relying on a sourcing agent to deliver you a good build, there's a lot of trust there, but remember, this sourcing agent wants to come back to you for more business, so generally they've gone through the pain of finding decent people to execute your jobs for you. So to run through the list, we've got investors right at the top. You know, we all use our own money, but why stop there? Why don't use other people's money to step in and do more deals using sourcing agents to deliver them to you? It's all about scalability. Builders, naturally, plumber, electrician, project manager. We can all project manage if you want to, but how can we scale up and have 3 projects on at the same time? You've just created yourself a job. This is what these guys do day in, day out, and the amount of cost for a project manager relative to the time that you will save having them involved, it's a no-brainer for me. That's what they do. Surveyor, planning consultant. Okay, so if you're thinking about doing something bigger style, maybe extending past that permitted development right, you're going to need a planning consultant. Now, the best planning consultant, here's a little tip, is a planning consultant that used to work for the planning department of the local council. There's quite a few of them. And then once they have a little bit of time under the belt, they will step away and become a private planning consultant. They know the tricks. They know what to do, what is and isn't going to get passed in their area. Architects, love these guys. Interestingly, if you boil an architect down, they are basically an artist. That's what they are. Now, I find that I've got to keep my eye on this artist because they are very much about how pretty the building looks and not so much caring about what my spreadsheet looks like. So, yeah, I definitely scrutinize what the architect comes back with because it looks nice, but it's not cost effective. A roofer, a joiner, a building control officer. So a building control officer is someone who will come around and check the quality of the building that has been built, make sure you're using the right materials, etc. You can use a local council building officer, or you can use a private company that adhere to the same standards. I tend to use the private control officer because the council guys are usually quite busy with a lot of projects going on. We've got painter, plasterer. Interestingly, I think Haley touched on this just before. Plaster seems to be the new currency amongst builders at the moment. It was extremely hard to get hold of. My guy pulled it out of the bag and finished plastering about 2 days ago. So that's absolutely fun. Now, what he went through to get 20 bags of plaster was quite impressive. But he got it done for me, thanks to Dave, and we're at the painting stage and the carpets are going down as we speak right now. Tiler, quite important, and kitchen fitter. Now, more things, people that you tend to forget about, window fitters. They are usually very busy, so you've got to book them in. A scaffold company, don't forget about them. You know, your builder might have a supplier for this, etc. A skip company. Rubbish refuge has become a big cost of a job nowadays. It really has, unfortunately. You've seriously got a price for a serious amount of the cost of skips. There is a number of ways where you can litigate this, where you can ask your skip company to supply you with a skip that is going to be for timber only. That will be cheaper than a standard skip, simply because they sell that timber on to a local power station. We have one near us called Drax, and the skip company actually make money by selling that skip load of timber onto them, interestingly. Carpet fitter, landscape gardener. Now, this isn't to create the Garden of Eden or anything, but it's more to fast forward at the end, get some of that roll-on grass. It's amazing when that first came on. You roll it out like carpet. I mean, we've peaked as a species when we're rolling grass out. That's amazing. Tree surgeon, letting agent, naturally, sales agent, finance broker, insurance broker, solicitor, and especially important at the bottom there, sourcing agents. I know I talk about them a lot, but they're seriously undervalued heroes for what they do. I use sourcing agents myself to get stuff that's out of my area, and they run the project completely remotely from me. It's amazing. I've got my project going on here, and they're working hard on my project elsewhere. It's awesome. I love it. Right.